All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking about real music on the Harmless Dave channel for a few people out here, just like you and just like me. So, Gene Simmons clarifies that Foo Fighters and Pearl Jam are not as good as or as big as the Beatles were. We'll get to that because it's kind of interesting. And here's a band you should check out if you like, say, Rat or Poison, Rat Poison together, if you like that as a combo. You might enjoy Danger Zone. They're a band from Italy, and this new album, it's called Shut Up, which I think is a great title for an album. That's what they look like. It's glam rock, is what it is. It's pretty hard rocking stuff for the most part. Oh, you know who else they sound like? Cinderella, the band Cinderella. So again, check out Danger Zone if you like Cinderella, Rat, things like that. I think you'll probably like Danger Zone. So, Gene Simmons talking to a podcaster thinks there's no way for the Foo Fighters to be the next Beatles. um, the discussion came about while Simmons was talking about whether or not rock is dead. Now, Gene has said this on a number of different occasions that rock is dead. He goes on to say that he likes the Foo Fighters. He doesn't say much about Pearl Jam here, but Pearl Jam was another band that came up as being as big as the Beatles, according to this guy who is running the podcast. Um, Simmons asked the guy, "Hey, could you name two bands that could be the new Beatles?" And the host named Foo Fighters and Pearl Jam. Simmons said, "Not on your life." So Gene disagrees. And good for Gene. You know, I don't always agree with Gene Simmons, but here I'm pretty much in lockstep with what he's got to say, although he is far more diplomatic and nice about bands like the Foo Fighters. He says, "I love those bands. Mike McCready told me he was growing up with those Kiss records. In fact, one of his solos, he took note for note from Ace Frehley." So, so he's basically saying that Mike McCready steals from Ace Frehley, but that's not his point. The point is, if you walk down the street and ask the first person you meet, a 20-year-old, and you say, "Name me anybody in Pearl Jam," good luck with that, right? Name me or tell me a song, hum a song. They can't. The rocker clarified his reasoning. He goes on, but I will interject here. The reason you can't hum a song when it comes to Pearl Jam is they're not all that hummable. Melody has decreased over the years, and grunge was like, if you had a graph, grunge was like, it just went down into a valley as far as melody. And that was done on purpose. That was a response to the cheesy sounding stuff. I mean, some of us liked the cheesy stuff, right? That's the whole point. But the cheesy stuff was about melody. It was like trying to top the other guy. Could we come up with a better hook? Can we write a better riff here? Can we have a cool instrumental part? You know, can we do a vocal that nobody else will be able to touch? That's not the goal anymore, especially when you've got AI. But even with bands like Pearl Jam and or the Foo Fighters, neither of whom really major in melodic quotient, I'll call it. Although, you know, some of the stuff that Foo Fighters uh, did or have done recently does have some melody in it, especially compared to Pearl Jam. But to compare either one of these bands to the Beatles, I think is a stretch. You know, I grew up when certain bands came along and people pronounced them the new Beatles. If anybody remembers the Knack, remember the Knack? My Sharona, right? Um, Everyone said, "Yep, the Knack, the new Beatles." And then Squeeze came along too, right about the same time, actually. I'm not sure who was more the new Beatles, The Knack or Squeeze, but people were, it's kind of like the next big thing, and we have to compare it to the Beatles. Now, Squeeze had two guys that wrote great songs together. So they were a little closer, I think, than the Knack, certainly closer than Foo Fighters or Pearl Jam. Differed in Tilbrook. They were often compared to McCartney and Lennon. Now, were they as good? No. But at times they were pretty decent, pretty innovative, and they wrote very good songs. And musically speaking, I think Squeeze, also a UK band, had some similarities to the Beatles, where um, the Knack were kind of like a new wave band that didn't have that much in common with the Beatles. People have compared Nirvana to the Beatles, and I just don't get that one either. I mean, if you're going to compare uh, bands to the Beatles, maybe that band should have written dozens of albums, or at least a dozen or so albums that are very melodic, very catchy, very innovative, groundbreaking. And you had four guys in the Beatles who were all just type A personalities, although some would say that George Harrison might have been more of like a type B or whatever. He was an A personality in his own way, and he was more humble and more reserved. And that's the other thing. You have to compare the talent of who's in these bands to the Beatles, and I don't think anybody can really stack up. I mean, yeah, there've been some. Led Zeppelin is a great band collectively. The Rolling Stones. I mean, you can go through a list. Deep Purple, I think, is a super talented band collectively. But then you add the songwriting and the style of music, which again, over the years, the amount of melody being put out there, being created, is going down because A, I guess musical taste has changed, and B, there's no longer that competition to outdo the other guy. Even in the 70s, when people were putting out singles for AM radio, the competition was fierce for that. You had to have a nice intro so the DJ could talk over it. And then when the song kicked in, it had to keep your attention. The bridge had to be amazing. The chorus had to be killer. The outro, I mean, the whole thing, even though it was probably like 2 minutes and 48 seconds long, I mean, the whole goal was to do it in 3 minutes or so. If it was 3:30, it's too long of a song. If it was maybe 2 minutes and minor change, that might have been too short of a song. But the goal was to write a great 3-minute song, and that took skill. I mean, you had to keep someone's attention so they wouldn't change the station, and you wanted to sell advertising. So again, the better the music, the longer people listen. And in those days, it was just one piece of ear candy after another, and it doesn't compare to anything Pearl Jam or the Foo Fighters have done. The Beatles definitely contributed to the ear candy bag because, again, there was so much that they did, and to this day, I don't think anyone's going to top that. So Simmons talks more about the celebrity aspect. He talks about how people know Dave Grohl because Dave's done TV commercials and rubbed shoulders with people outside of guitars and concerts. He says that's how you get to be iconic. So then Gene Simmons basically is going down this road that to be good, you need to be a celebrity. To be recognized and to be put into that category with the Beatles, you need to sort of hobnob with people in other professions, maybe. I'm not sure. Um, so even though I'm sure Gene Simmons isn't all that impressed with Taylor Swift checks all of those boxes and more, right? So anyway, my rationale, my reasoning for thinking the Beatles are the best or one of the best of all time is because of the music they made, not because of who they were as individuals or how they branded themselves once the band broke up. Those things are all important, but it's the music that really matters. That's what counts in the end, and hence this is why I do this channel, because music to me can be something very important. It can change your life. It can move the world. And it depends obviously on the type of music you're listening to. And to me, when I listen to Pearl Jam, I typically get depressed. Foo Fighters, little less so. But again, I think the music should have some positive characteristics where it's uplifting and encouraging, and puts you in a good mood. And you can go back to the 1950s and you'll hear music that was trying to do that. 60s, yep. 70s, yep. 80s, yep. 90s, maybe here and there, but overall, I mean, I guess if you compare what happened in the 90s to what's happening now, you're going to think, hey, the 90s were sure a great time to be alive. And they weren't. It wasn't a bad time to be alive, the 90s, but everything changed in that decade. And both Pearl Jam and the Foo Fighters were part of that change. All right. So again, if you like Cinderella or Rat or bands that kind of sound like that, Danger Zone is really good. This is their album called Shut Up, which I'm about to do soon. But I will ask people to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that already. Also, to support the channel as I try to build a whole new channel from zero. There's Patreon and there's also Buy Me a Coffee. I'd really appreciate support in that way, as things have changed a lot in the last month and a half. And so if you've found me again, make sure you subscribe. And also, if you can support, that would be really appreciated. There will be links in the description of this video, and I think in pretty much all the other videos. Keep in mind, the support addresses, the links themselves have changed a little bit. So make sure you follow the new links. And thanks again for watching. God bless, and I'll be back soon. So stay tuned for more on the Harmless Dave channel.